I am 26 years old and the father of a junior high school age boy named Ollie, born to my former partner, Caitlin. For the past 4 years, Caitlin has had little involvement in our son's life. According to the court order, I have sole custody of Ollie, and Caitlin is obligated to pay child support. To get these payments, I have to remind her regularly, sometimes even threatening to take her to court. My life is full of worries, from doctor's appointments to dance and soccer school, from caring for my son when he is sick to comforting him after nightmares. Although it is not easy, I gladly take on all of these responsibilities because I love my son so much. I repeatedly asked Caitlin to take more interest in Ollie's life, but she replied that it didn't interest her. As time went on, I stopped expecting her to help and support me. According to the court order, Caitlin was supposed to have weekly video meetings via FaceTime, but more often than not, the initiative to communicate fell to me. If I didn't remind Ollie to call her, even on his birthday, Caitlin could simply ignore the date. Over time, I decided not to take the initiative to communicate, in part because she often didn't answer the phone. When Caitlin sent gifts to Ollie, they were often inappropriate, and she rarely enclosed greeting cards. I used to buy cards on her behalf and even sign them for her, but after Ollie's last birthday, when he noticed the similarity of the handwriting on the card to mine, I realized how much effort I was putting into trying to maintain the image of a mother in his eyes. My sister advised me not to bother with this effort, and if Caitlin sends gifts, not to explicitly state that they are from her, avoiding further gift labels or cards in her name. A few weeks ago, Caitlin informed me of her decision to buy gifts from a wish list she found and send them herself because she was finding lower-priced items outside of Amazon. She asked me to wrap them and purchase a card. I suggested that she do it herself, considering she was wrapping gifts for her family and friends. My response was negative to her offer to do it for her, emphasizing that she could have made at least a minimal effort, wrapping the gifts and signing the card. When I offered to just give the gifts to Ollie, clarifying that they were from Mom, and expressed the idea that he wouldn't care if they were wrapped, Caitlin decided to send them unwrapped. I hid them in the closet, planning to present them as is. However, after getting a reminder from her about packing, I reminded her that I wasn't going to do that job for her. I pointed out that given that she only lived 45 minutes away, she could personally come over, wrap the gifts and present them to Ollie herself. In response, she accused me of being unreasonable and became enraged. While I pondered the feasibility of wrapping the gifts myself, I also became weighed down by the thought of constantly making the effort for two people. Fatigue and frustration with this state of affairs became my constant companions. Your ex is a part of your past. Leaving gifts in postage-paid wrapping may not be the ideal way to present a surprise to a child, but it is a method to hide the contents and record details for future needs. In the event that it becomes necessary to prove your rights to be involved in the child's life, such a measure can be helpful. You seem to be facing difficulties in your relationship with your ex-spouse. Realizing that she is still the mother of your child is important, but that does not mean that you are obligated to comply with her demands that go beyond a court order to raise the child. The court has set the rules of engagement, and it is important to adhere to just those rules without adding to or diminishing them. Your efforts as a parent deserve to be recognized. You should not take on additional responsibilities if the other party is not proactive in organizing child-related moments, such as preparing gifts. If she would like the gift to be presented in a special way, she should have organized it herself. Gift wrapping is a small thing compared to the gift itself and the love you give your child. Your child sees who is making a real effort in her life and who is supportive. It's important to remember that real care and attention mean more than the trappings in gift wrapping. You continue to be a great parent by doing what you can for the good of your child. Next story. My ex-spouse and his new wife are raising a little girl. She turned 8 years old this year. Her birthday is on the 22nd. She has been able to develop a close bond with my daughter. However, the feelings are not entirely mutual. Despite this, my daughter treats her with warmth. My ex was hoping that I would allow our daughter to attend a birthday party with their family. However, my daughter already had plans for her birthday. She was going on a trip to the mountains with her friend's family. Their departure was scheduled for this afternoon, and their return was scheduled for the next day, the 23rd. With the holidays and other events, my daughter doesn't plan to spend time at her father's house until the 27th. My ex has expressed his displeasure, believing that waiting until that date will take too long. He claims that his youngest daughter will be deeply upset by my daughter's absence from her birthday party. According to him, the girl is already facing various difficulties and feels left behind. I have unpleasant memories of birthday parties from the past, due to which my ex and his spouse strive to organize the perfect celebration. They believe that my daughter's presence is essential to the perfect celebration, given her special bond with the birthday girl. My daughter, however, has no particular attachment to these events. I don't want to interfere with her plans, although I genuinely feel sorry for the younger girl. My ex-spouse and his wife could have mentioned the upcoming birthday party in advance. He claims they did, reminding me of the party plans during my daughter's birthday party in May. However, neither my daughter nor I have any recollection of it. I never knew the exact date of the girl's birthday. My daughter only remembers that her birthday is in December without knowing the exact date. When my ex reminded me about the party this morning, it was clear that the information about the plans and date should have been provided more clearly and in advance so that we could plan our participation. You are not responsible for your daughter not being considered an emotional support for your foster child who requires her to change plans. Introducing her as a sibling she barely knows is not the best way to form a warm relationship. It may cause resentment and even rejection toward the new sibling. Your ex-spouse doesn't seem to quite get the point, claiming to have mentioned it in passing once, 7 months ago, and resenting why you don't remember. To expect that it should only be mentioned once in a year if it's really important seems unrealistic, especially since the child is less than a year old and your daughter doesn't have to obey her stepmother's instructions on her father's plans. It would be reasonable to suggest that your daughter call her sister on her birthday, using her own phone for FaceTime or other video chat if she is ready for that. It's important to ask her if she wants you to remind her of this and when it would be convenient to make the call if she agrees. This is a great time to show her that even when plans can't be changed, there is always a way to show concern for others. Now I want to tell a different story. Yesterday, my husband and I took an airplane trip with our toddler. He is abundant with energy, so we prefer to provide him with an individual seat instead of holding him on our laps during the flight. This time, we got seats near the bulkhead at the front of the cabin with extra legroom. After we took our seats, the flight attendant urged us to buckle our son in for takeoff and landing, specifying that once the seatbelt indicator was turned off, he could be transferred to his own seat. Following her advice, I sat the baby on my lap and buckled us both in, waiting for the other passengers to finish boarding. At the last moment, a flight attendant accompanied by a tall man leaning on a cane approached us. She pointed to the seat between my husband and me and asked if we would mind if the man took it. My husband responded in confusion, trying to clarify what she was talking about. The flight attendant explained that the man needed more legroom due to physical ailments and suggested that if we didn't mind moving, he would be happy to take an aisle or window seat. My husband responded by pointing out that the seat we had purchased was for our son, not a free seat, to which the flight attendant countered that there were no official seats for children under the age of 2. Despite our surprise, we explained that we were aware of this policy and had specifically purchased a separate seat for our child to ensure his comfort during the 10-hour overnight flight. After a brief discussion, the flight attendant and a colleague found an alternative seat for the man, and 15 minutes later, the plane took off successfully. The incident sparked a conversation in the husband's family circle after the flight, where the issue of understanding and respect for personal boundaries in today's society came up. Your responsibility does not come into play when it comes to planning flaws that do not affect a neighboring seat you selected and purchased in advance. The flight attendant, in an effort to convince you to follow certain requirements, has compromised your peace of mind. While it is important to emphasize that your family's needs deserve priority over the comfort of a stranger with whom you would have to share space for 10 hours. This approach seems particularly burdensome for children and their parents. This situation raises questions about mutual respect between different generations. There is a tendency to underestimate the importance of other people's interests, which is not only characteristic of today's generation, but also of previous generations. It seems that many people forget the importance of restraint and the ability to keep one's opinions to oneself, especially when it comes to public statements. In the context of travel, it is highly recommended to book seats in advance that meet individual needs and not expect other passengers to be willing to sacrifice their comfort in your favor. Generational criticism is misplaced here, as the problem is not age categories, but a lack of understanding and respect. It is also frustrating when a flight attendant proposes a solution without making sure it is feasible. Mistakes should be acknowledged and apologies should follow, especially when passengers are required to forego services they have paid for. Ultimately, every passenger deserves to have full access to the services and facilities for which they have paid, without the risk of being placed in an uncomfortable position due to misunderstandings or unforeseen circumstances during the flight. My next story. I am 45 years old. I have 3 children, a daughter who is 15 and 2 sons aged 13 and 12 respectively. 2 years ago, as a special favor to my oldest daughter, I gave her a MacBook for her birthday. This gift delighted her, and she used it carefully so that the machine could pass for new. However, one not-so-great Friday afternoon, an unpleasant incident occurred. Her daughter took this MacBook to school with her instead of her Chromebook. Unfortunately, a classmate was careless with her backpack, resulting in damage to the device's screen. This event was deeply upsetting to my daughter. Realizing that what happened was not her fault, I decided not to punish her. I shared what had happened with my wife and mentioned the possibility of buying a new MacBook, even though I had already made up my mind to buy one. My wife argued that I should postpone the purchase, seeing it as a lesson for my daughter. However, I disagreed with her arguments, given that my daughter had always been careful with her belongings. The next day, my daughter and I went to the store and purchased a new MacBook, emphasizing that she was not to blame for what had happened. This action displeased my wife, but I am convinced that I did the right thing. We later discussed the situation with the parents of the boy responsible for the damage. They expressed their disappointment at what had happened and promised to take action, including an apology from their son. We did not seek compensation for the injury, although we did question the need for accountability. I would put it this way: your decision does not make you inappropriate as a parent for purchasing a new computer for your daughter. Rather, what is questionable is the lack of attempt to hold those directly involved in the incident and their parents accountable, and the failure to attempt to recover funds for damages. I am intrigued as to why no consideration was given to replacing the screen, which, even without considering the Apple Care Plus program, would have been significantly cheaper than buying a new device. There is no obvious reason to purchase a new laptop when other parents would no doubt have had to at least partially reimburse the cost. The situation may have been assessed as quite complex. The parents of the guilty child may have been in a financially vulnerable position, unable to afford to participate in the reimbursement without jeopardizing the basic necessities of life for their family, such as food or housing payments. In this light, it is important not to jump to conclusions about the motives behind your decision without knowing all the circumstances. Certainly, MacBooks represent a significant cost, and there is no desire to burden another family because of a mistake made as a teenager. Put more deliberately, it's worth considering that deciding to purchase a $1,700 laptop for your daughter's school needs may not seem like the best choice. Given the risks associated with daily use in a school environment where damage is more likely, suggesting that it be used exclusively at home, and that for academic purposes at school, opting for a more affordable Chromebook, as many do, seems like a reasonable approach. It is important to emphasize that significant financial decisions, especially those involving children, require the consensus of both parents. The presence of disagreement and lack of agreement may indicate a need for deeper discussion and finding a common solution. One wonders why more effort was not made to reach a mutual understanding between you and your spouse as to what lesson should be learned from this situation for your daughter. The assumption that one parent sees money as the one-size-fits-all solution while the other seeks alternative approaches highlights the imbalance in views on parenting and managing family resources. The lack of attempted repairs before purchasing a new device and the lack of instruction on careful handling of expensive equipment in the school environment opens up questions regarding teaching responsibility and the value of things. Also notable is the lack of interest in the consequences for the other child involved in the property damage, which may indicate a broader context of the situation that requires reflection. A story that really surprised me. This situation seems much more complicated than it may seem at first glance. My husband suffers from food insecurity and often overeats, even when he is not hungry. He has a fear that the food will be gone before he can taste it. As a result, any purchased snacks or carbonated drinks quickly disappear from our home as he consumes them one by one until there is nothing left. Sometimes he even tells the kids that they can't have dinner, reasoning that there isn't enough food for him to enjoy later. Amidst these circumstances, I was forced to leave work early. I have insisted that he seek professional help, but therapy has not yet yielded any noticeable improvement. My husband shows no desire to change, considering all the proposed methods pointless and refusing to follow the advice of specialists. Today, I bought groceries to make lasagna and took a large salad for myself, as I can't use red sauce. Not even an hour after I got home, he was already going through the fridge asking if he could eat my salad, reasoning that he was starving. Although I initially refused, his persistence and tears made me relent. In the end, he only left me a few bites. No sooner had I started cooking than he started complaining about being overly satiated, which is a common condition for him. Despite my irritation, I decided to make only half a portion of lasagna, just enough for the kids, given his words that he was already full. However, upon seeing the finished dish, my husband reiterated his desire to eat it, despite his previous words about being full. My decision to refuse caused him to resent me and blame me. It is important to note that my husband's eating problems are not related to his health. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighs 250 pounds. When we met, he weighed about 180 pounds. The children are my biological children, not his. His eating issues became apparent about 6 months ago, although he previously admitted to hiding food in the car for fear we would eat everything. When he talks about attending therapy sessions and then refuses to do the assigned work, his actions are limited to simple therapeutic hand exercises in your presence. You have every right to feel anger, however, long-term this anger will not bring relief. Your spouse's eating disorder is affecting the entire family. He shows a desire to eat food meant for the children, even though he was full just 20 minutes ago, thus not only setting a negative example of behavior for the children, but ultimately causing them to rush the food for fear that otherwise someone else will take it. It's time to put an end to this behavior. If he is unwilling to change his disordered eating behavior, it becomes clear that he is getting everything he wants right now by grabbing the food everyone else needs. This behavior resembles the classic behavior of an addict. He is not taking steps forward, and this needs to change. My father, who grew up poor in a developing country, used to talk about how rarely he got food and compared getting a bottle of Coca-Cola to finding a bar of gold, coming to tears at the memory. He would rather starve than deny me an extra portion of dinner. It's hard to imagine that my father could do what your spouse did to his children. He is facing a serious problem and needs to get a grip before this behavior starts to affect your children. I don't tend to tolerate potential partners who don't show progress in therapy. If he showed improvement, he could be redeemed, but you should not commit your life to a man who consumes food like a vacuum cleaner.